Astrology isn't just about signs and symbols. It's a tool for navigating real life. Hello, and welcome to Astrology with Alisa. I'm your host, Alisa Dixon, and I'm so glad you're here. Let's dive in. My kids watch a show on Netflix called The Investigators. It's a really cute show about this group of elementary school kids, probably in 5th or 6th grade, who live in Australia and solve mysteries together. So they are investigators, but they call themselves investigators. A cute little play on the words. And they all speak in Australian accents, which makes the whole show even more fun to listen to. And each 30-minute episode has 2 mini mysteries. They're always lighthearted and silly. Things like the case of the lousy lunch orders or the case of the distracted detectives. Well, last week on Wednesday, I had a case of my own, and I really wished these kids weren't fictional because I needed the investigators to solve my case. The case of the disappearing podcast. Seriously, you guys, last week for most of Wednesday, my podcast was missing on Apple. I don't know if any of you noticed. You probably didn't. It was probably just my family and a few close friends because I kept texting everyone, "Do you see it yet?" Because I still don't. All day long. I couldn't find it. First thing in the morning, I checked Apple Podcasts, as I always do to make sure it published okay. And it wasn't there. It was live on Spotify. It was live on my website. It was live on all the other podcast platforms. But on Apple, nothing. At first, I thought maybe I'd messed something up. But I hadn't. I checked everything. Twice. I emailed my podcast hosting platform. They were really nice and provided me an email to contact Apple, but they didn't have a real answer aside from saying that Apple was experiencing delays. So then I emailed Apple, and I waited, and I waited, and I waited, which, if you know me, you know is not my strong suit. I'm an Aries. I like quick fixes, clear answers, momentum. I'm not very patient. But instead, I just had to wait. All day, I kept refreshing the feed. And since this was only on Apple, I thought maybe it had to do with my iOS. Sure enough, I needed to update my phone to the next software version. And then I checked again. Still missing. Other podcasts dropped throughout the day, ones that usually come out after mine. There they were, live and visible. But mine, still missing. I stayed busy all day doing lots of other things, but I never saw it. And what made it even worse, this was an episode I was especially proud of. It was about Saturn, which, quick refresher, is the most grounded, structured, concrete planet in the solar system. Saturn rules time, commitment, responsibility, and reality. If there's any planet that represents what's real, it's Saturn. And as someone with a strong Saturn in my own birth chart, I was really excited for you all to hear this particular episode. Eventually, as I was getting ready to go to bed, I finally found it, but not where I expected it. It was buried in my up next list, tucked behind episodes that had been released after mine. Mine was sitting there in its normal spot, as if it had been there all day long, since early morning, which made me doubt myself and wonder, had it been live the whole time and I just couldn't see it? Or did it actually drop late? Either way, I was confused and honestly exhausted from all the frustration. And all of a sudden, it hit me. In my tiredness and confusion, I had a moment of clarity. I knew exactly what made my podcast disappear. It was Neptune. I realize I may sound crazy, but let's talk about Neptune for a minute. Neptune is one of the outer planets, along with Uranus and Pluto. These are what astrologers call the higher consciousness planets. They move slowly, they sit far from the Earth, and they are felt more internally than externally, more collectively than personally. Neptune is the higher octave of Venus. Where Venus rules beauty, pleasure, and attraction, Neptune takes it higher to dreams, love without conditions, and deep spiritual longing. Neptune is the ruler of Pisces, the ocean, dreams, imagination, spiritual creativity, and transcendence. But on the flip side, it also brings illusions. Neptune can make things murky and confusing and blur boundaries and dissolve structure. Now, if Neptune touches one of your personal planets, like your sun or Mercury, or a sensitive point like your ascendant, it can absolutely show up in your life as confusion or as exhaustion or brain fog or as something being taken away without explanation. Kind of like my podcast last week. Right now, Neptune is in the early degrees of Aries, and Saturn just joined Neptune in that same place. And interestingly, these early degrees of Aries include what's known as the Aries point, which is 0 degrees and 0 minutes of Aries. It signifies where things begin, where fire meets form. So these two very different planets are coming together here at the Aries point. And when the energies of Saturn and Neptune blend for the first time in a long time, let's just say it's not exactly seamless. It's been a little clunky. Saturn wants rules, structure, timelines. Neptune wants to erase the lines and see what's underneath. And when they meet, it's foggy, it's spiritual, it's humbling. And sometimes it's annoying because for me, Saturn is my commitment to release this podcast weekly on a schedule. And Neptune said, sure, but let's make it invisible for a while. And it wasn't even just me. When I reached out to one of my astro besties, she told me her entire podcast platform disappeared for 2 full days. So I was all upset about just Wednesday. She had Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. That's Neptune. It doesn't break things, it veils them. And if you've been feeling confused or like something is just off, you might be feeling it too. Check where 0 degrees of Aries lands in your chart. That's where Saturn and Neptune are having their moment. Interestingly, in my chart, 0 degrees of Aries is in my 3rd house of communications. And communicating is exactly what I'm doing on this podcast. So that is the area of my life that got a little foggy last week. It will be interesting for you to see where 0 degrees of Aries is in your chart, because that might be where you might be feeling something similar. This is where astrology becomes so unique and so individual to each person. No 2 people feel a single transit the same exact way. And that's what I find to be really magical. Please reach out and tell me if you can identify where you're feeling foggy. I would love to see how this is showing up in your lives. Wherever you might be feeling this energy, just roll with it. That's really all we can do. You're probably having some sort of a beginning. Saturn brings the shape. Neptune brings the surrender. And together, they're asking, can you trust what's forming even if you can't fully see it yet? Because that's the lesson of this moment. Not everything that's real is visible, and not everything that disappears is lost. Sometimes what vanishes is part of a bigger pattern, one that only becomes clear with time. So if things are feeling a little dreamlike right now, or frustratingly out of your hands, take a breath. This is Neptune, this is Saturn, and this is what happens when they come together. And honestly, I still don't know exactly why my podcast disappeared for most of Wednesday. Maybe it was a tech glitch, maybe it was divine timing, or maybe Neptune just wanted his moment. The whole episode was about Saturn, the planet of structure, discipline, and routine. But Neptune moves differently. And now that he's in Aries, maybe he's going to be a little louder about it. Less whisper, more presence. So maybe this was Neptune's way of saying, if you're going to talk about me, you need to feel me too. And I did. Message received, Neptune. You got your feature. And I would really appreciate it if you would stop hiding my episodes. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow the show, leave me a review, and share it with a friend. And if you'd like some help navigating the fog in your own life, you can visit my website and book a reading. I'll leave the link for you in the show notes. I always love hearing from you. Reach out anytime. Take care, and I'll see you next time.